live from Polokwane, from in the province of Limpopo. Welcome to this special edition of the Watchdog. Now, in a few hours, the ANC, the governing party in South Africa, will begin its celebrations, birthday celebrations, turning 110 years tomorrow. Now, our journalists have been on the ground throughout this week, led by our political editor, Mzwandile Mbeje, really trying to get a sense from ANC leaders as to what is foremost in their minds, coming as they do out of an election where they were battered and bruised. What does the future hold for the party that has been governing South Africa over the past 27 or so years? Now, we'll hopefully get a glimpse of what ANC leaders are thinking following an ANC-NEC meeting, and tomorrow President Cyril Ramphosa are going to speak to the party faithful about what the leaders of the ANC think should be the focus of the party in a year that is not going to be less eventful than the results we saw after that November 1 election. Now, you will recall that several, ANC elective conferences, provincial, regional, and other elective conferences were postponed over the past couple of years because of COVID. So it's going to be a very tough year because the factions within this political party are going to be sizing one another. And those provincial, regional conferences are going to be where these fights are going to be fought. So it is important, or it's going to be important for the journalists to really get a sense of what is going to unfold. And coming again as this celebration, birthday celebration, comes on the back of the release a few days ago of that state capture report. It's going to be interesting to hear what President Cyril Ramphosa and the rest of the leadership of the ANC think needs to happen next, what their take is on the report itself, and what it is that they hope to do over the next few weeks and months, as of course South Africa awaits action from them. So it's going to be interesting indeed. So in a few minutes' time, we are told President Cyril Ramphosa is going to give an address at this fundraising gala dinner. Now, this particular fundraising dinner is also important given the fact that the ANC simply doesn't have money. We've seen visuals of their workers having to march, having to protest outside the headquarters of the political party, registering their protest at the fact that they hadn't been paid. We've heard from other people, service providers, who are complaining also about not being paid. Landlords, where the ANC has offices, have not received their money. And I did have a conversation earlier on with the Treasurer General of the ANC about what it is that the ANC is going to do about this, because it is not just a matter, it's not an internal matter, in other words, because if the ANC can't be trusted with running its own affairs, how can they be trusted with running the affairs and the budget of the country? If the ANC can't protect its own workers, can it protect the workers of the country? Now, those are just some of the questions that I posed to the Treasurer General of the ANC as we were talking broadly about the state of finances. That interview will play a little later on. For now, though, I'm going to speak to our colleague, to my colleague, Mzwandile Mbeje, who is our political editor. He has been on the ground together with his team, really trying to get a sense of what is foremost in the minds of ANC leaders. Mzwandile, you guys have been here for a good few days now, following ANC leaders around. Have you gotten any sense as to what it is that preoccupies their minds right now?
You know, Vuyo, this being the election year for the ANC, it's certainly not lost on the members and the supporters here. I can just tell you, when the president of the ANC went to Sekhukhune, for example, the rings of the second term rang very, very loud. So that told you, I mean, here and there, you can hear that already there is an effort to try to start mobilizing towards the end of the year. It will be very interesting because we still have to have a number of conferences. In fact, this province, even the chairperson of this province, Stan Mathabat, who, by the way, is also eyeing to be the national chairperson, is basically saying, well, it's a given that the president goes for the second term if you look at what has been happening. So clearly, with them trying to revive the ANC and try to manage their issues and difficulties, you can see they have their eyes December 2022.
Of course, I'm in Limpopo, which is where Stan Mathabat is currently the chairperson, as well as Mpumalanga, which interestingly is the province from where D.D. Mabuza, who was the kingmaker at the Nazareth conference, hails from. So we're going to see the first salvos once these two provinces hold their elective conferences.
In fact, I can just add the province of Eastern Cape. If nothing changes in March, they are also going to have their elective conference. And I can tell you there, Vuyo, one of the things that will come out is perhaps the pronouncement on who is to be the president. Having looked at how the wind goes, chances are they are going to pronounce for the second term for the incumbent. So clearly, you can see that is what the build-up is about right now. Yes, they are trying to strengthen. In fact, he himself basically said, guys, let's forget about CR17 or CR22 or you remember the former NDZ, what. He said this is one ANC. But he is saying that because he has seen that the campaigns have started. Maybe the position of the president may be a foregone conclusion. Watch out for the number 2 position. You've just spoken about David Mabuza. We already know someone from here who is a prominent member of the ANC at the Youth League, Boy Mamabulo, is basically saying he's going for deputy president. We know that someone like Gwede, someone like Godemantash, someone like Paul Mashatile, someone like Zweli Mkhize are in the mix. And of course, there is just nothing confirmed as yet, but of course we've got our ears on the ground. We can already hear the murmurs everywhere.
Now, while the ANC's internal dynamics are playing themselves out, as you are saying, South Africans are waiting to hear what is going to happen on the back of Volume 1 of the State Capture report that was released this week, with volumes 2 and 3 are still coming. Did you get a sense over the past few days that ANC leaders are thinking about that?
Certainly, but from the official party point of view, Vuyo, they basically said we'll support what the Zondo Commission has recommended, so we ask everyone to support it. But you and I know that already those who may be fingered are dismissing it and are saying this report is predetermined. So clearly, when Part 2 and Part 3 come out, it will actually be even more interesting to see how the members of the ANC will react, because I can tell you more people will be fingered, more things will be said, and it may deepen more divisions that we've already seen. In fact, they are still trying to battle those divisions that emerged in 2017. So just today, there was an event which was supposed to be addressed by the suspended Secretary General. But of course it didn't happen because of some of the interventions. The fact that suspended as he is, he still has some sort of support, or is still able to mobilize on the ground, tells you, Vuyo, that divisions aren't overcome yet. So they still have a long way to go. And of course, it's not lost that perhaps the first major divisions in this ruling party happened here. Who can forget that titanic battle between President Mbeki and President Zuma, the president then, the former then. So we are back in Polokwane, perhaps to heal, or the divisions to continue. Only time will tell.
See how that pans out, and of course how it affects the body politic in South Africa, but more importantly perhaps whether the ANC's internal divisions get to affect the running of the country as well. Now, as I was saying earlier, I did have a conversation about an hour ago or so with the Treasurer General of the ANC about the state of finances of the party on the back of questions that South Africans are asking, that if the ANC can't take care of its workers, can it take care of the rest of us? If it can't run its own finances, can it be trusted to run the finances of the country? If it can't take care of its own workers, can it really take care of the workers of our country? Those are just some of the questions that I put to Paul Mashatile, the Treasurer General of the ANC, and this is how that conversation went. TG, probably one of the worst times to be a Treasurer General of the ANC, given the challenges, the financial challenges that this organization is facing right now.
Good evening, Vuyo. Good evening to the listeners. Yes, indeed, it is a very challenging time. One of the biggest challenges for us now is that we have new legislation that requires disclosure. So once business people donate money to the ANC or any political party beyond 100,000 rand, we need to disclose. And some of the business people are reluctant, and therefore we struggle to raise funds. There are some who are still supporting us, but not like before. So yes, we are struggling.
But is a brand ANC still attractive to business people?
The brand ANC is still very attractive. We have had events here in Limpopo. We had the golf day, oversubscribed. The dinner tonight, people are still looking for tables. It's full to capacity. Even in the community meetings where I was, all the venues were full. But people do raise their challenges in their various communities and so on. But the love for the ANC has not diminished.
You don't think that what has been revealed, in the State Capture Commission and in the courts, probably plays a role as well?
Yeah, indeed. If you look at the report of State Capture, you will see that some of the leaders of the ANC are fingered. But our attitude as the ANC is that we need to look forward to the future. We need to renew the ANC and ensure that some of the recommendations that have come from the Zondo Commission State Capture report that requires our attentions, we address them as the African National Congress.
And of course, there may well be people who aren't necessarily doing business with the state in underhanded ways. Everything may well be above board. But the fact that they will be under scrutiny, even when they do business above board, may well make some business people perhaps think that, you know what, I don't want to get into any controversy, even though I'm not corrupt or I don't corrupt people, but let me just, stay away.
Indeed, I think I tend to detect that as well, that there's a great reluctancy out there, not because people are corrupt, as you say. For instance, we don't say to business people, donate money to the ANC because we'll give you a tender. We don't do that. So Luthuli House does not get involved. People get tenders from the state, well and good. If we ask them to donate to the ANC and they do, well and good, but there's no quid pro quo that you will donate to the ANC. If you donate to the ANC, you'll get a tender. No, we don't do that.
Now, as things stand, obviously you aren't able to pay your bills, you aren't able to pay your staff, and the rest are, service providers, in certain instances, offices as well. So where to from here? What's going to happen? How are you going to, or planning to, turn that situation around?
There are a number of ways we are looking at Vuyo. One of them is we rely on membership fees from our own members, levies from our members of parliament, ministers, and so on. But also we do get some contributions from government, not enough though. We have been raising this with the government that I think it's important that they consider increasing political party funding to all parties, not just the ANC, so that we are able to deal with these challenges. But as I said earlier, there are business people who are still donating to the ANC. I mean, just 2 months ago, we were able to raise funds to pay salaries, and for October, November, coming a bit slow, but still coming in. But I think the biggest solution for us will be for government to consider increasing political party funding.
Well, I'm sure you would have seen and heard people saying, well, if the ANC can't handle its own finances, can't pay its staff, how do we trust it with the nation's finances? If the ANC can't protect its own workers, how can we expect it to attract, to protect the workers of our country?
I mean, I think the biggest challenge for the ANC is that over the years, we relied on private sector funding. Almost 70% of our income come from private businesses. And I think that's the biggest challenge. We need to begin to look at other initiatives. So the problem of not being able to pay staff on time and so on is not the problem of leadership. Is the problem of lack of access to resources than we used to do before. Mm-hmm. And that's why we are looking at these other ways of looking at what other ways we can introduce to raise funds and ensure we have adequate funding. But I can tell you that since COVID-19 in 2020, we have not retrenched a single person in the ANC. We have paid our people right until November of this year for all this period. Their full salaries, including bonuses. So we don't get enough resources as we do, but we do care for our staff. As soon as money comes in, we pay them.
You don't think you have a huge bill, and that's something you need to look into as well?
We don't have what?
You don't think you have a huge wage bill that you should actually be having? In other words, have you thought of reducing the amount of people that the ANC employs?
Yes, indeed. Over the past years, our salary bill alone is 18 million rand a month. The officials have agreed that we need to cut that drastically. So we have started the process of right sizing, but we didn't want to rush, retrench people, throw them into the streets. So we are looking at redeploying people to other institutions as much as we can, retire those who have reached pensionable age. So that process is unfolding as we speak, but we are managing it as humanely as possible, not to throw people just into the streets. But we can't survive with the current wage bill. We need to cut it at least by half.
And you don't think there will be ramifications once you start that process or implement it?
Well, we are engaging with our staff, and that's why we're taking our time. We're not rushing the process because we're dealing with human beings, and that's why we are looking at redeployment. We're talking to other institutions, PBF, our political school, to take some of the comrades and so on, so that if there are people who have to be taken out, at least there mustn't be many who don't have new jobs. But we're going to try and make sure that we assist as many as possible who leave the ANC. And as I said, those who are older will make sure that we put them on pension, pay them their pension so that we reduce the staff.
And has this not taken its toll on you as a person, or as the man who really has to deal with this on a daily basis?
Yeah, it is quite tough, but I have full support of the president and the officials. From time to time, we put our heads together and see what we can do. But obviously, the Treasurer General must be at the forefront of finding solutions on matters of resources. I think we we're getting there. There's light at the end of the tunnel. I think we will survive.
TJ, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Will. Thank you very much to the listeners.
Well, the ANC's problems, of course, aren't just about money. They're about the direction that this political party is prepared to take, given the problems that we have all seen. A lot of what has come out of the State Capture Inquiry Report, Volume 1, that was released earlier this week, actually points to problems within the ANC and how it has evolved over the years, particularly the past 27 or so years. Now, at crucial times in the history of the ANC, the youth has emerged and intervened and really tried to steer the ANC in recognizable directions, and in many ways has been a savior when the ANC was experiencing problems. The question many people are asking now is, where are the ANC's young people who previously have actually been used by people as they ascended and really took control of the party with, of course, disastrous consequences at times. Up next, we talk to the ANC's young leaders to see or to get a sense from them as to what they think should happen next. Okay, let's continue then with that conversation, as we seem to be having a problem there. I am now joined by Tinyiko Ntini, who is the leader, the General Secretary of the Young Communist League. Now, as many people would know, the South African Communist Party, of which the YCL is a youth wing, is an ally of the African National Congress. Only yesterday, in fact, the General Secretary of the South African Communist Party made no bones about the fact that they believe that on the back of that state capture report, action needs to be taken, and they are demanding harsher sentences for those who enabled or benefited from state capture. Tinyiko, good evening. Thanks very much for your time. As young people, you've seen since November how the ANC performed, and I don't think that surprised you. You are now, on the back of the report that was Volume 1 of the State Capture Report that was released earlier this week. The ANC or ANC cadres and those who were doing the bidding for the state capturers didn't come out of it smelling, of roses. What, as young people, do you believe needs to happen if your organization is going to be able to turn its fortunes around?
No, evening, Vuyo, and indeed I agree with you that they were bleeding coming out of the local government elections. But obviously 2022 becomes a very crucial year for the entire movement as a whole, because you will note that, by the way, all the alliance partners are due for their elective conferences this year, which the SACP will be in July, in September, COSATU, and the ANC in December. And obviously, I think as young people, one thing that inspires us, as you'll know, that today again it's an important day where we're still celebrating the life and times of Peter Mkaba, one of those that in their youth age were able to bring about social transformation and remain a strata that can be able to agitate for change. And indeed 2022 would have celebrated 95 years of Dumanogo, one of the youngest Secretary Generals of the ANC. And I think at that time they were able to show at the difficult times, because this is the same Secretary General that when the ANC was facing some challenges even towards Morogoro, he was still part of that leadership collective. And indeed we remain inspired by those generations generations that came before us, and we dare not to fail them. And we make sure that this year, leading to those do or die moments for the entire movement, as young people, we need to unite and make sure that indeed we don't find ourselves inheriting organizations that are remaining with a shadow of itself alone, but we are part and parcel of bringing about change, because truly, as you highlighted, things can't remain the same. It can't be business as usual. It's important that we really need to make sure that as young people are in the forefront to agitate for change, and our organizations need to modernize, need to be able to understand that they cannot continue even to mobilize, because if you check even the current generation, it's way different from the generations that have passed. So we need even to be able to adapt to the realities. And again, one important aspect is that South Africa is getting more young and younger. So till our organizations appreciate the importance of appreciating a younger generation that must bring about new ideas, that must bring about change, and then they continue to isolate, it's going to be very difficult indeed to live another decade or even another centenary that we can witness. But again, ourselves as young people, there's a serious challenge that we have to appreciate, that in most of these factional battles, we are found in the middle of this, because due to the high level of unemployment, of the vulnerability that young people face, we end up ourselves singing to the tune of those that have no intention to unite this organization or to renew them. Then we find ourselves being in the forefront of these factional battles. Until ourselves, we take ourselves serious as young people, and we unite and understand that there's a need to define a generational mission, that we need to make sure that indeed we achieve it without failing it, then we're just in for a very serious challenges in the movement.
Now, in a short while, we are going to play some packages of the ANC president when he gave a lecture in commemorating the life and times of Peter Mugaba, who is the former president of the African National Congress Youth League. And a little later on, I will be speaking to the national convener of the ANC Youth League task team. But we're also going to play a clip from the ANC deputy president who went to lay a wreath at the gravesite of Peter Mugaba. But do you believe, as young people who are leading within ANC structures right now, that you have what it takes to to impress it upon the current leadership of the ANC, that the way they have been doing things up until now is simply wrong, and it is not helping anyone. It is not helping this nation. It is not taking this nation forward. Have you been able to sit in front of the current leadership as the Progressive Alliance and say to it, guys, this has got to stop? Have you been able to do that? Or do you only do that outside, or when these elders, aren't in front of you and you are speaking to us journalists?
No, look, we continue to raise critical issues, even in terms of policies that our movement need to make sure that it propels within the government, because that from here, after the president would have given the marching orders, obviously we'll be preparing for the Khotla, and which all of us will participate there. Those are internal platforms that were able to raise some of these critical issues, that it can be business as usual. If the economy remains in the hands of the few, we need to be able to have the leadership that has a zeal indeed to advance economic transformation very well. And we'll remember, even in 2012, when we resolved on a decade of a new cadre, the problem is that in all those 10 years, we failed indeed to develop young people that can be able to be prepared to take over. But indeed, it needs to go beyond leadership positions in the movement.
But this has kind of almost become a ritual. I mean, as you have just described, January 8th, after January 8th, you go to the Khotla, then this goes to cabinet, and cabinet does the same. Now we've got the marching orders. But if you look at, the past 10 years, it's actually been bad, which means that, there's gatherings and the processes that follow do not yield, the kind of result, then it probably means if you have been making your voice, heard, if you've been making your views known, then it probably means that you're not being heard as young people.
No, look, as I've said, that actually 2022 give us an opportunity, because we're going even to elective conferences where we have to make sure that in the leadership collective there's even more younger generation that starts to come in. And it's not only about the national conferences only. If you check the regional congresses that will be sitting, provincial conferences, and by the way, the entire Progressive Youth Alliance itself is due for its elective conferences this year, and we need to continue to work as a unit and unify ourselves. One of the key issues we've raised is the high level of youth unemployment. It can't be business as usual. Through the YCL's campaign of Jobs for Youth campaign, the Youth League has just declared itself on youth unemployment, and it means that we need to come together to put in place proper perspective that we need to influence our organization, and not only at the level of the Lekgotla for the ANC and the Alliance, but even going to the Cabinet Lekgotla. We need the leadership that will be able to understand that as ministers, they are not there to represent themselves or their only views, but there is high importance of being able to understand what the movement seeks to achieve and where the direction of the movement is going. So we can't allow a situation where some of the ministers continue to just develop and define their own programs outside. One of the critical issues that today we are reflecting on is the energy crisis within the country. We've seen there's a debate around the issue of coal production and again renewable energy. And this has become a critical thing. And as young people, we need to be able to voice clearly and make sure that no, we can't just swiftly move the transition. We need to be able to understand that we need to preserve what currently we have, which is still the coal, but while we continue to make sure to say, let us consider other avenues to do, and we see how do we do, because the reality is that that transition has an impact even on job losses and job security, and we can't allow again a situation where we're going to see many working class people continuing to be retrenched. So it's important, as you have just reflected in your intro, including the issue of the state capture report. By the way, we're part and parcel of those that have always called for a judicial inquiry into a corporate capture of the state. And this means that it's not only the rot in the public sector, even the private sector itself. There are challenges that are there, and always whenever there are challenges, when there's looting, you are always told that no, there's collusion. But when you come to the public sector, it's corruption. These are some of the issues that we expect even our government employees to be able to make sure that indeed there's clear punishment to all those that are implicated, no matter who you are, and then this will be part of renewal, because the reality is that if tomorrow we fail to start a process of giving hope to our people, the people has shown us is not only this year, even in 2016 they've given us a gunshot as a warning, and then this year it was very tough, the previous local government elections, and indeed if things remains the same, indeed we're going to face a serious challenge. But as young people, who are ready to be part and parcel of the change that is needed, and make sure that we play our role to agitate to bring about change in our movement.
So, hold it there for now. Tinyiko Ntini, who is the General Secretary of the Young Communist League, as we continue to hear from young South Africans who are members of this ANC movement. Are they prepared to really force that change if it is not coming their way? Of course, considering the fact that it is not just about the ANC, it is about this country. As things stand, this party continues to govern this country for better or for worse. Let's take a look then at how the ANC president and his deputy paid tribute to some of the young people who have actually carried this organization and from what we know began to make a difference in the life of this organization until, of course, a lot of wrong and bad things began to happen, as the state capture report that was released this week actually showed. Take a look at what the president of the ANC and the deputy president of the ANC were up to today, honoring those young people.
The ANC Youth League's Peter Mokaba lecture got off to a rocky start. League members were barred from entering the hall due to COVID-19 regulations. Plan B had to be activated, with Ramphosa addressing the members outside. Honoring Peter Mokaba, the ANC president said the Youth League must not replicate the past decade, but rather return to the days of its militant and courageous warrior, the late Mokaba.
You know what happened in the past few years when our Youth League collapsed. And I'm so pleased to see you in such large numbers. We must do everything, comrades, that the Youth League must never go back to the situation that it has been in the past few years. It has been an embarrassment.
The Youth League members had other plans though. They want the ANC president to get a second term come the 55th National Conference. This view was also echoed by the Peter Mokaba Regional ANC chairperson, John Mbi.
We have said that in the ANC we have always given an opportunity for a president to serve 2 terms. It is no different with President Cyril Ramphosa. We believe that he can continue serving the people of South Africa.
As the ANC celebrates its birthday, it's clear that preparations for the December elective conference is also in full swing. Samkele Masego, SABC News, Polokwane.
Remembering one of the ANC Youth League's firebrand president, Peter Mokaba. ANC Deputy President David Mabuza, NEC members, and the National Youth Task Team paid their respects to the late militant and firebrand leader by visiting his family home and laying wreaths at his gravesite. Mabuza gave the Young Lions marching orders to rebuild the movement and restore it to its former glory.
The structures of the ANC Youth League. Go and build the structures of the ANC Youth League. That is a commitment that we are making here. That from here, you'll go and build those structures. And the commitment again that we're making is that in those meetings, in those branch meetings, in those conferences, no one should die. No fighting in those meetings.
Mabuza further preached a message of reclaiming the ANC and rooting out corrupt individuals within the party's ranks. This comes days after the State Capture Commission report was released, which has implicated ANC bigwigs.
Here again, to recommit ourselves that we're going to rebuild and renew our movement. We're going to get rid of all rogue elements within the movement. Thugs, criminals. We're going to get rid of those people.
Whilst drawing strength from the spirit of Mokaba, the National Youth Task Team, which is tasked at taking the Youth League to conference, says it would be a huge injustice to the memory of Mokaba if they do not deliver the long overdue Youth League conference.
The task that we have right now is a similar task, by the way, that was given to the likes of Peter Mokaba in 1991 when they were tasked with re-establishing the Youth League in the country. We are at that moment again in 2022, and as we said when we spoke earlier on today, that we dare not fail on that task.
As the ANC heads to elective conference later this year, it is the NYTT's wish to see more young people being elected in leadership positions. It will be up to this crop of young leaders that will take the ANC Youth League to Congress in March. But question is, do they have the ability to restore the ANC Youth League to its former glory as the days of the great Lion of the North, Peter Mokaba? Natasha Piri, SABC News, Mankweng, Limpopo.
That's how the ANC president and his deputy honored Peter Mokaba, one of the former leaders, presidents of the ANC Youth League. Speaking of the ANC Youth League, I do have now the convener of the National Task Team that has been set up by the ANC to try and reorganize the youth of the ANC. Nongceba Mhlawuli, good evening. Thanks very much for your time. 110 years, but coming, of course, on the back of a beating and battering that we saw after the November 1 election, coming also on the back of the release this week of the state capture report. In a year that the ANC is going to see lots and lots of regional, provincial elections, alliance partners will also be holding elections. What for you as young people, what does this year mean? What is it that you would like to see and hopefully work towards yourselves?
Good evening, Vuyo. As young people, we have declared the year 2022 as the year for youth jobs. We've said that, in fact, this is the year that we must and we are going to declare a war against youth unemployment. And that's because of the simple reason that the state of youth in South Africa is quite dire. We know that young people are in their majority unemployed. We know that young people are in their majority quite destitute. So as the Youth League, our focus this year is the issue of youth jobs and youth empowerment, to the extent that what we're expecting out of tomorrow's statement, which is the Jan 8 statement, we're expecting the ANC to really tell us what the ANC's plan is with regards to responding to the dire state of young people in South Africa. That is something that we've communicated today to the Deputy President when we were with him earlier on today, when we were at the wreath-laying ceremony, as well as with the President himself when he was doing the Peter Mokaba lecture. So that is our focus as young people in the year of 2022.
Did you get a sense that you're being heard?
We did get a sense that we do get a sense that we are being heard, okay. On the basis that both of them have assured us that they understand the state of youth and that it will come out of tomorrow's statement.
Let's hope that indeed is what is going to happen. Let me take you now to the president of the ANC, who is about to deliver a speech at this gala dinner. Hopefully we'll get a sense of what is foremost in his mind and in the minds of the National Executive Committee of the ANC.
Thank you. Program directors, Deputy President David Mabuza, and the other officials of the African National Congress, Your Majesties, our traditional leaders, Excellencies, Ambassadors and High Commissioners, members of the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress, present, Comrade Sten Tabate, the chairperson of the ANC in Limpopo, Comrade Mbe, the chairperson of the ANC in the region where we are, leaders of the Alliance who are here, faith-based organizations, leaders, business leaders, comrades and friends, good evening to you all. I'd like to take this opportunity to apologize to the golfers who are here. A number of people played golf this morning. I should apologize for not having been with you the whole day, but also for my first shot. But you should have seen my third shot. I'd like to welcome this moment of saying a few words to you all, and also welcome this opportunity in having so many business leaders with us who have, as the Treasurer General, Comrade Paul Mashatile, have given generously, have supported very generously. It is through these types of efforts that the ANC is able to raise funding, as our funding has become tighter and tighter. So we really thank you for continuing to support the ANC in whatever manner you can. Thank you very much. I'm seated next to two queens, Queen Mwamidwa and the Queen Mother, Tlapuraya Phahla. I spent the better part of the last 2 days with the Queen Mother, and I kept telling everyone that this is one of the moments I enjoyed most, because as soon as we visited the Royal House, she said, "President, mina ngihamba nawe." So there's nothing that sounds so wonderful to a person when somebody else says, "Mina ngihamba nawe," and she follows up with it, and we are still together even now. So it's a real joy. As you know, it's been quite a while since we were able to gather in this way under COVID conditions. The COVID pandemic has meant that we had limited face-to-face interactions and engagements for almost 2 years, and we must still adhere to the known public health protocols even whilst gathered here. This pandemic requires that all of us, particularly as the people who are gathered here representing various formations, ANC, government, business, organized labor, civil society, religious leaders, we must continue to work together to ensure that we effectively manage this pandemic, as we have to live with it. In 1918, there was the influenza, which was a massive pandemic that spread around the world. I'm told it went on for 3 years. We've now had 2 years of this pandemic. Who knows how much longer it is going to go on for. This pandemic is seemingly going to be with us for the foreseeable future. It is one of the biggest challenges that we face as a nation and as a country, and indeed as the world as well. There is a huge task on all of us to combat vaccine hesitancy by encouraging family, friends, and communities to vaccinate in larger numbers, and to ensure that they should also go and get their booster shots as soon as they are eligible. We are working very hard as a government to finalize our policy on vaccine mandates for certain sectors, be it certain events or certain moments, as this will be an important addition to our basket of measures to manage the pandemic. For we have to continue managing this pandemic. This afternoon I addressed a rally of young people. I must say that more than 50% of them were wearing masks, but another 50% were not. And when I asked how many had vaccinated, I think about 40% indicated that they had vaccinated. What this means is that we must continue managing the pandemic. We are all aware that the pandemic exacerbated already precarious economic position that we are going through in our country. Many people have lost their jobs, and when you look at a situation where 1.5 million people have lost their jobs in a short space of time, then you are aware that you are really facing a serious challenge. And this is the time when our unemployment rate has reached its highest ever level, and largely due because of the pandemic. Our government invested heavily in providing additional and much needed social and economic relief measures in the face of this unprecedented public health crisis. We are easily counted as one of those countries that, in terms of responding to support our people, to support businesses, have done much better than many other nations. So much as we are still in the midst of this pandemic and we cannot really see clearly our way forward, we can say that our government and our people have come up with a number of initiatives that enable our people to navigate their way around this pandemic. The ANC and its alliance structures were instrumental in informing government's social assistance as well as economic relief programs. The Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan, which was launched in October of 2020, draws extensively from the movement's positions as well as interactions and exchanges of views we had with the Alliance as well as a number of other stakeholders, business communities, in the Network Social Partner Platform as well. As part of this plan, we have undertaken several economic reforms in areas such as energy security, the efficiency of our ports, digital migration, and access to broadband, which is going to be happening soon, and also addressing the issue of the ease of doing business. Now, many of you are business people. You've often come to us and have said, we need to reform the ease of doing business, as you continue to encounter a number of challenges and constraints as well as red tape. And you have said we should roll out the red carpet and remove the red tape. And this is precisely what we are doing, and we hope to be able to outline more plans and initiatives so that you are able to run your businesses well and that you are able to invest even much more.
Our economic reforms are therefore afoot and will even gain greater momentum this year as we move forward. Recognizing that it will take time for businesses to recover from the pandemic and begin to create the much needed jobs and even protect a number of jobs, government implemented the presidential employment stimulus, which in its first phase was able to create 550,000 employment and livelihood support programs and opportunities. This has been an unprecedented initiative in the history of our country, where we were able, without any form of administrative hiccup or corruption, to be able to bring up to 550,000 people in a short space of time in a number of job opportunities, particularly in education. We will continue to implement public employment programs to support unemployed working age adults, and will work in consultation with organized labor and other social partners in developing these programs. South Africa already has a substantial social support system, which is internationally regarded as effective and well-targeted. Those from other countries who have taken the trouble to look at our social support program regard our program of social protection to our people as being quite an effective and well-targeted. Today, more than 12.4 million South Africans receive 18.3 million grants. And I often say that I know of no other country on our continent which is able to, through a grant system, to support up to 18.3 million of its citizens every month. This is what this government does. It has been, and many people often say that, well, we've become a social welfare country, and is this sustainable? We are a country, we've become a nanny country, is this sustainable? It has been demonstrated without these interventions, poverty and inequality in our country would have been much higher. For we are one country that is still having to deal with the legacy of our past in many, many, many ways. We were also able to leverage our social support system to protect the most vulnerable in our society during the recent pandemic. To this comprehensive system, we added the temporary social relief of distress grant to ensure that all our people are able to meet some of the most basic needs of their families. Now, the social relief of distress grant, which even as I go around and meet our people, people always say, President, 350 rand each time as I go around. They say so because when all of us who are seated here would never have thought that 350 rand would ever have an impact on a person's life. There are many in our country who have seen this 350 as little as it is, and we regret that it was pegged so low, largely because of our fiscal position. But that has provided vital support for the unemployed in our country during the pandemic, and it has reached 10.3 million people, 14.4 million people applied, and in the end, 10.3 million people were paid out. And this has lifted more than 5 million people above the food poverty line. Now, these are fundamental initiatives that our government has taken during the time of greatest crisis, the time of greatest need for our people. There is a clear need for some form of income support for unemployed and poor South Africans based on clear principles of affordability as well as sustainability. The case is made, but we also need to weigh up other matters as well. And these are matters that Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana continues to crack his head about, scratch his head. And for some of you who may know him, you've already seen that he's losing quite a bit of hair already, thinking about all these matters. It is in this environment that we must speed up, and we will speed up, the efforts to conclude a social compact to effectively address poverty, unemployment, and inequality. What we do know is that this massive crisis that our country faces has been developing over a number of years. And of course, COVID-19 exacerbated it, because at one go, we lost 1.5 million jobs, and many of the businesses that some of you run here and own and operate were set back in many, many ways. So this is a responsibility that weighs on the shoulders of government, that also weighs on the shoulders of business, that also weighs on the shoulders of labor and communities. All of us, therefore, have a responsibility to address this challenge. Government must do its part, so must business as well, and indeed labor. The ANC will mobilize to effectively contribute to this process by concluding a range of compacts to inform the national compact that we need to arrive at. All our efforts to fundamentally transform the economy and address poverty, unemployment, and inequality must be underpinned by a developmental, capable, and ethical state. And in our efforts to do this, we also have to address the challenges that our businesses are also going through. And it is in this regard that as we build this compact, as we engage and listen to one another, we will be able to see what are the trade-offs. What is it that each one of us needs to contribute, and what are the trade-offs? And some of the trade-offs can be national trade-offs. On government side, we will continue to make all efforts to build a capable developmental state. We will continue with our drive to professionalize the civil service, to ensure that our civil service servants or public servants serve the public with respect, with integrity and distinction. But much more, we want our public servants or civil servants to serve our entire nation with commitment and up their game and make sure that they serve our people on time, they don't drag their feet, and where they are able to move things, they move things as quickly as possible, so that it does not take months and years as our people wait either for permits, for licenses, and all that. This time round, we want our public servants to lift their game and professionalize themselves and ensure that we serve our people with greater distinction. Part of this drive will include making sure that we appoint people who are fit for purpose and qualified individuals to positions of responsibility. I repeat, fit for purpose and people who are qualified. We should not be appointing people who are not qualified for the tasks that we want them to perform for the people of South Africa. So our process of doing so is going to be quite broad, it's going to be quite thorough, and it's going to lead to a number of processes that will ensure that in the end we end up with a highly professionalized civil service. At the same time, we will need to embark on a reform of our security establishment, as we must ensure that all our people are safe and feel safe. This is an important task as we continue to face the various challenges that many of our people and institutions are facing. We will talk more about that in the coming period. Finally, let me talk about the African National Congress and the process of renewing and rebuilding the African National Congress. A strong and united ANC is fundamental for the success of our country. That is a given, that goes without saying, and this is something that we are going to act on, and we are going to make sure that it happens, that we have a strong ANC. Right now, many people believe that the ANC is on its knees, it's on its last breath, it's about to collapse. Far from it. The ANC is very much alive and it leads. We must be clear that to do a good job of governance, of being the governing party, we must first of all do a good job in the functioning of the African National Congress. With this in mind, we must focus all our efforts on rebuilding, renewing, and strengthening the ANC. There have been a number of challenges that we have had along the way to renewing the ANC. When the governing party, which is the leading force in society, is divided, it affects society and it also affects government negatively. And leaders and members of the ANC are agreed, all of us are agreed, on the need of thoroughgoing renewal and rebuilding in order both to adapt to the changing external environment as well as to deal with negative and destructive tendencies that have over time crept into our organization. The ANC-NEC has agreed to intensify and accelerate renewal, focusing more energy on renewal and rebuilding, which should be based on some key pillars that include building ANC branches as agents of change with a membership that respects and is respected by the people. The branches of the ANC are the foundation and lifeblood of our movement. Our structures from branch, regional, provincial and national level need to enhance the capacity to conduct sound democratic and various other practices which are based on our constitution and in a way that should enable us to rebuild and renew our organization. And thirdly, we have always stressed that the membership of the ANC must be guided by integrity and must also be a disciplined membership. And fourthly, ending corruption and patronage within the ANC and broader society is an overriding objective which we are determined to achieve. Building a capable state is one of the key objectives that we have set ourselves to achieve. But we want to do that through cadreship of our movement that is highly conscientized, that puts the interests of our people first. But we also want to build a more youthful organization where we allow young people to get into key leadership positions as they can give vision. Advancing gender equality is one of the key pillars that the ANC is going to continue advancing. And of course, we want to embed the new membership system that has helped us to solve a whole lot of problems and make sure that it is deeply rooted within our organization. And another key pillar for which we thank you for being here is to help the ANC achieve financial sustainability and stability. And because we are the type of organization which we are, all our financial woes have hung out into the public, and we'd like to thank you once again for being here and for having the courage to come tonight to be associated with the African National Congress. Now, your presence here, apart from signifying your financial support for the African National Congress, is a clear proof that you still have faith and confidence and trust in the African National Congress. And we thank you for that. Another important pillar as we go on with our renewal process is embracing technology as an organizing tool. We have been able through the pandemic to continue with various of our activities, although as we went towards the elections, we face a number of challenges, but technology is assisting us in all this. These are but some of the pillars on which our renewal and rebuilding process is based. But some of the key pillars, of course, are our membership. It's, of course, our the components of the ANC, our leagues. The Youth League, which held a memorial rally for Peter Mokaba today, is in rebuild mode. It's rebuilding itself, and we are very pleased and proud of what the Youth League is doing. Our Women's League continues to be so deeply involved in organizing the women of our country, and we often see them in a number of initiatives. Our Veterans League is deeply immersed in the process of renewal, and they have developed a most wonderful document on the key components of renewal, and they are going to be helping to lead the process of renewing the African National Congress. Our alliance is very much alive to the challenges that our country and our people are facing, and they, COSATU and the South African Communist Party, are getting deeply involved in engagements, in discussions on what we should do next and how we should navigate ourselves out of the crisis and the challenges that our country is facing. So work, colleagues and comrades, work is continuing on each of these areas. Whilst we must say, encountered resistance from elements in our own organization on the process of renewal and rebuilding, we will not deviate from the fundamental task of renewing and rebuilding our organization. That is going to happen, whether people like it or not. So in the end, I'd like to end by saying to all of us who are here, I want to ask you to walk along this path with the African National Congress and to work with us and to support us whilst we undertake this arduous task. But it is a necessary task, and it maybe is similar to this fable that is often talked about, how an eagle renews itself. It flies out to the highest peaks and takes out its talons, its feathers, and waits for regrowth and for rebirth. And this difficult period that we've been through is precisely that. The ANC. Okay. Amanda. Amanda. Now, it's okay, don't worry. There's nothing dangerous. Nothing is going to happen. Go stand back. Okay, now I conclude by saying I call upon all of us to work together to deal with the challenges, including this type of challenge that we have with our energy supply process. Now, as I conclude, I want to conclude by then saying I would like to do two things. Firstly, having thanked you all for being here, I want to thank the leadership of the ANC in this province for two things: for organizing all the activities that we have been having throughout the week, preparing for our January 8th. Comrade Chupu Matabata, I congratulate you for the wonderful work. Now, the second congratulations, I'd like to congratulate our leadership here in the province for having held the ANC flag very high during the local government elections. Well done. You clearly demonstrated that Limpopo in all its various regions, is truly the home of the African National Congress. Thank you very much.
Let there be light.
All right, so that's ANC President Cyril Ramphosa, who's just finished addressing the party's fundraising gala dinner at a resort outside Polokwane, speaking to party members and business leaders about what government has been doing to enable the business sector, initiatives like cutting red tape. He spoke about public employment opportunities to help deal with the country's unemployment situation. He talked about the social support that government has been able to provide to millions of citizens at a very difficult time in the country's history. The COVID-19 pandemic, the need for income support, says that this remains an issue that also needs to be addressed. He talked about a social compact that was needed to deal with unemployment, inequality and poverty that still needs to be concluded, and that this was a responsibility that must be addressed by every one of us, business, private sector, public sector, as well as communities. He talked about professionalising the civil service as it continues to do important work to enable civil servants to up their game and serve the public with greater distinction. He says that this will include employing people that are qualified and fit for purpose. He concluded by saying that despite the naysayers, the governing party is strong and it lives, but rebuilding and renewing the party is very important work. He said that a divided and poorly functioning ANC has a profound effect on society, and he says that the negative tendencies that have crept into the party need to be arrested and that the party need to be rebuilt from the branches upwards. He talked about patronage and corruption, saying that these had to be dealt with so that a capable state could be built. He says that it's also important to infuse youth into leadership as well as advancing gender equality. He did admit, though, that the party's financial difficulties had been laid to bear and that these needed to be managed. And he thanked the business leaders. He said they were courageous to come out and be seen, to be putting faith, trust in the ANC at this fundraising dinner. All of this, of course, happening as the party celebrates its birthday this weekend and the delivery, of course, of the January 8th statement. And as you saw right at the end there, a moment which he made humour of. The lights went off for some reason. Not quite sure why, but he managed to take us through that.